We're running a few minutes late, but we had two great speakers. We will not reduce the time for the third speaker. Now, I'm really glad to have Rayvn on stage with us. Hello, Rayvn. How are you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Good afternoon, actually.
Yeah. Good morning, afternoon on the East Coast, for sure. Just what I wanted to say, we had two great speakers, entrepreneur side, investor side, talking about value, APIs, whatever. But there's a value that is different, that is for all, that is knowledge and education, right? And this is why we wanted to have you there to tell you a little bit about what you're doing at the Smithsonian Institute about culture, specifically Afro-American culture. Yes, so the stage is yours for 25 minutes. There will be some questions for you. Let's talk about reinventing storytelling with APIs. Thank you, Rayvn.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mehdi. And I also want to thank Isa, Ivan, and your Apidays team, because you guys have made this very pleasant experience. And Chet and Tiffany, thank you for leading this conversation, because your Chet's talk about the next 10 years and Tiffany's talk about the investment and the future of APIs really fits in with what my job and what we're doing at the Smithsonian. And just to preface, as a side, I'm speaking for myself as a representation, as a representative of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is a unit under the Smithsonian. But the Smithsonian Institution as a whole has a centralized office. I am not speaking for them and what they're doing in the future. So I just want to make sure we lay the ground for that. So I want to talk about our journey. So this conversation, Mehdi is right. It's about education at the heart of it, but it's really about storytelling, because cultural institutions and museums, exhibits, they exist to tell stories, to educate. And the future of APIs from the perspective of a private and public sector organization that serve a broad spectrum of customers and citizens also applies to us. So the conversation we're going to have today that I'm going to share about is about the Smithsonian, give a little bit of a plug and infomercial, talk about the landscape where we're finding ourselves at this point in reference to APIs, telling you how we're making a way to be able to get to our goal of becoming API first, and the pioneers, the applications that have made it so that we have these stepping stones to get to the goal that we are trying to do. I will talk about the next steps and the things I'm going to be doing in the future to help promote this within my unit. And then if there's time, I'll take some questions. So about the Smithsonian. So the Smithsonian is the world's largest cultural research complex. And it was instituted in 1846. Last year, we celebrated our 175th birthday, and we're still celebrating it. It is made up of 21 museums, 21 libraries, the National Zoo, educational centers, research centers, all across the globe. And in 2020, Congress passed legislation to establish two new museums, the National Museum of American Latino and the Smithsonian American Women's History Museum. I represent the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It is the 19th museum. It was the newest museum. Now that we have the two that are now on paper, we're no longer the newest. And it's, according to our founder, it is a way to share the history of African Americans, history, culture, and how we contributed to the history of the United States. And who am I, and why do I have the honor of speaking to you today? I was sworn in, so I'm a government employee, a civil servant in 2017, and I am the senior application developer, architect, and the DevOps engineer for the museum. And my principal as an application developer, I serve as a technical consultant and the primary implementer for this very small or smaller in-gallery interactives, those things that you play with when you go into the museum. And they're part of the larger exhibitions. If they're larger, I'm not actually doing the larger interactives. I spend a sizable amount of my time. I have a lot of hats, but a lot of my time is thinking and playing, and I have the best job ever. But what I do is I research ways to repurpose emerging technologies so to enhance the visitor experience. So I look at things like blockchain or VR, AR, ML, all of those acronyms. I look at them and I see, hey, how can we use them first in the museum to be able to promote our mission of education and of storytelling. And then I will make a prototype, show it to my leadership, and they do with it what they please. But I'm okay if they don't use it. It's that I get to learn the technology. This particular journey about becoming API first, it started when the museum reached its 5th birthday, which was last year. And so let me set the landscape for you. There's this German philosophy, it's actually one of my favorite words, really, which expresses the spirit of agency and defining moments in history. The term is zeitgeist, and that means spirit of the age, sort of. No one can deny that the pandemic was a moment. It was such a moment. And I don't know any area of life that was not impacted by this phenomenon. I don't know of anyone or organization or industry that was not transformed by it either. Every level of our global community had to adapt and adjust not only ways of working, interacting, engaging, but also our ways of thinking and perceiving. So, the Smithsonian, our founding director, Lonnie Bunch, fostered a digital-first way of thinking, and it's an organic part of our museum's culture. It's also the way we work. When he became secretary of the institution, he and the other undersecretaries updated the organization's strategic plan. I think they did that in 2019. And they made it future focused with the emphasis on innovation, impact, and reach. So in 2021, while we were celebrating our 5th birthday and adapting our storytelling and community programs in light of the pandemic, the Smithsonian was celebrating its 175th birthday, and the institution's leadership was rethinking how to facilitate public access to the millions of objects we have in our collection. There are actually 7 strategic goals, and these are the goals, but the ones that I've highlighted are the ones that are the priorities that impact my daily life and what I have to do for my unit, as well as my colleagues that are in the other units that do what I do or similar to what I do. The first one, goal 1, is a priority, be One Smithsonian, because as an institution with quasi-autonomous units with a centralized governance, the need to present a united front, adopting shared values and speaking with one voice is critical. And so goal 1 is expressed as be One Smithsonian. This means that that there should be greater collaboration among the units. And when I say units, I mean museums, the zoo, the research centers, and the galleries that we're called units. And the desire to wrangle our disparate collections and make it so that they're accessible to the global community, whether they're exploring the exhibits while in DC and in the galleries or the museum or via the internet. Goal 3 is the most impactful for me because 1, it's on my performance evaluation, and 2, it's something that I think about all the time, and it is the goal of reaching 1 billion people. Yes, the secretary said we can achieve this by developing emerging digital technologies for museums, so making the museum in a way where interactives have this platform, but also creating new digital platforms to not only serve our researchers and the staff that work within these units, but also to use and repurpose for our visitors. So making a way is part of the landscape. So we've set that landscape and we shared the start of the journey. So what I want to do is share the part of the journey where idealism and reality come to a head. So the Making a Way, our museum boasts a permanent exhibition, which is part of our community story. It is Making a Way Out of No Way. It's entitled that, and the exhibit explores themes of agency, creativity, and resilience through personal stories of African Americans who have challenged racial oppression and discrimination and created ways out of no way. This pretty much summarizes where I found myself when I thought, you know, I bet an API can solve the problems that I'm trying to solve. So I rolled up my sleeves like Rosie the Riveter, and I assessed the need and the current state of things within my museum and within the Smithsonian overall, because again, we're trying to be one Smithsonian. So when I am thinking about what I can do to enhance the visitor experience for my museum, I'm also thinking about how this could extend to the other units, whether or not they are a museum, a gallery, or the zoo or research center. So it has to be extensible to incorporate them all. So the business problem that I identified for us is from a ground level perspective, is the design and the implementation of a way to surface our collection objects, to tell the story and educate the public via innovative digital product accessible in the gallery, via the interactives, and via our website. And these were the requirements. There has to be whatever this thing, the API is that delivers the information that can be used by something else. It's got to be accessible. That's like the number one, because we are accessibility first. And it's got to be able to surface the collection in a way to make it available to the public. So we need to do that. From a programmatic perspective, I have to be able to code it once, maybe twice, but no more than that, and so that it works. And as I've been listening and taking notes about how APIs get jammed up, because once you make it, it's kind of rigid because it's locked in with the way that you've made it originally, so that you don't mess up the person or the organization that's using it. I'm keeping that in mind, and I'm trying to think of innovative ways to make this API that I want to design as extensible and as plastic as possible. It also has to be secure, adaptable, flexible, and I have adaptable twice, but I didn't mean that. Extensible is really what it's supposed to be. It's my acronym for SAFE. That is what the API I'm thinking about making it needs to be. It also, when I use it and I create interfaces for the content owners or curators or historians, when I create that part of the interface, it's got to be able to serve the technology diverse stakeholders. Some people who are great with technology and some people who would rather not. It also has to, whatever it is, that the API has to be able to get the data that will allow me to create a digital product that will delight the visitor, because that's actually the ultimate goal, is to enhance that visitor experience. Looking at the current state. So the current state of how data is stored and how things come to fruition in the gallery or on the website began, and it's been evolving over time with the digitization efforts. So the SI Central Office created the Digitization Program Office, which oversees the efforts of not only digitizing images of the objects, but also 3D reproduction of these objects. And depending on the museum and on the gallery, the digitization of the collections is in various states. Freer Sackler, they've done their whole collections, all 200,000 of them. They're in digital format. The Design Museum, Cooper Hewitt, that's in New York, they've done a lot. They had this really big push to digitize their images. And so they've got a lot of their collection online. And then you have a museum like Natural History, which boasts millions of objects in their collections, in multiple collections, which I doubt that it will take over 100 years to be able to digitize everything that they've got in their collection. The other thing is that our collection management system is centralized, but it is a little bit old and it really needs to be updated. And the data store for exhibitions, because again, what's supposed to happen with the API, it's supposed to emulate the in-gallery experience on a digital platform. But the exhibitions, there are objects, there are images, and then there are graphics. And none of those are stored in the same data store. That's problematic. The other thing that's problematic is the way we apply accessibility. And because accessibility is one of those requirements that is up there, it's a high priority, the accessibility compliance needs to be worked out. So thinking about this and understanding where I need to go, what I need to do, we've made strides. We have actually pioneering applications that have come out because of the things that we have done. And it's been a step-by-step process to get us there. So if we return to the idea of that defining moment, the pandemic forced the issue. And for the Smithsonian, donors eased the way with their financial support. Because while we are a government organization, kind of, the museums and all of the galleries, everything runs on donor money. So they're not supported by citizen money. So we do have these galleries. So taking baby steps, the institution and individual units created digital products that demonstrate what is possible with one API. We only have one real good API in the organization. So there was the Smithsonian-wide digitization project. I spoke about that. It was a massive effort. It used volunteers from who signed up with the Smithsonian, did it online, did it remotely, to help transcribe documents, as well as people in our 3D and digitization office to digitize those images. And almost, I think every unit we have a digi team, and the digi team is responsible for making sure that these assets are digitized. Then there was the Smithsonian High. The Smithsonian High was actually first conceived by the Hirshon Gallery and Sculpture Gallery. They actually thought about the High. And what it is, it's a mobile app where you go into the gallery for Hirshon, and there are QR codes where you use your mobile device and you scan the QR code, and then you'll be able to have access to the data for that particular object. And you can save it. You can use it for your own. And I believe that you can use it in a creative way with the Creative Commons. Don't quote me on that. I have to actually look that up before I shouldn't have said that. The next thing that happened was the SI Open Access Project, which, hallelujah, I am so glad that happened, because what that did is it took that one API I was telling you about, it took it from the state that it was in, which caused me great frustration, and it made it a little bit better. So now that the collections for the Smithsonian, things that are not licensed, things that are not sensitive, things that don't have these constraints around how we can use them, it took those objects from the collection system, and then it went to and made it possible for the public to use it. So it does have a Creative Commons license, so the public can peruse the collection and use them any way they want. And so the Open Access Project allows you to just create a way. And if you do a really creative, innovative project with it, we ask that you allow us to showcase it on our museum. And from there, the units started using open access. And so my museum, we have our own open access project, which means that we take the open access capabilities that was offered by the Smithsonian, and we filter it so that it only has our collection objects. And so we've have now this open access. So you can see how these steps happen, like digitizing, and then a unit using the digital assets to be able to create a product, and then having that need and that goal, push it so that Smithsonian recognize, let's go ahead and make our collections, or try to figure out a way to make our collections open. And then the units being able to use that and make that open. And one of the most recent things that my unit has come up with using open access is creating this searchable museum. The searchable museum is this wonderful application that allows you to peruse the collections, but in a guided way. I think I have it open on yes, here it goes. So I'm going there. I don't think there's music. Hopefully I don't remember if there's music. So if I refresh it, this is searchablemuseum.com. And what it does is when you go to the site, you get this wonderful splash screen. And once it stops, you are able to scroll down. And I have to plug that Bloomberg Philanthropies were the ones that funded this project. Our first exhibit that's in this searchable museum is Slavery and Freedom. If you were in the museum, it would be the bottom 3 floors. They're actually underground, and they're called the Slavery and Freedom exhibition. And when you click and enter into the exhibition, and let me mute the audio, then you get this wonderful timeline that shows you what the way the History Museum is. And what's really cool about this is that the way it displays, it is running from, if you were physically in the museum, it's starting from the mezzanine level and it's working its way down to the bottom, where we talk about the introduction of slavery into the United States. So these were the pioneering projects that for me will help me on with my next steps. So what are my next steps and what are my to-dos? Well, I'm going to make one big ginormous API to serve them all. That's my goal. And I'm hoping to be able to use the open access API, which is not so open when you want to use it internally, because it's kind of kludgy and it doesn't have a real good way to use it over HTTP. I've got to work with them, with the organization. But I'm working on an accessibility application, which is a collaborative project with the National Center of Atmospheric Research. And it's like an application to help blind and low vision users navigate cultural institutions. And it will pull data from the collection management system. I'm also working on a prototype to revamp our interactive management platform within the museum so that we have a uniform platform to present our collection objects. And then I want to use that the collection with the API to transform the static spaces within the museum into these more educational spaces. We've got this space in the museum. It's a contemplative court. It's a beautiful space, water fountain, very low lighting. It gives you a place to relax and to just to be present after your experience, especially because it's in between the history galleries and above. So these are my next steps. And so I don't know if there's time for questions.
Thank you very much, Rayvn. We are just like really 20 seconds for questions. The question we have is like, so with APIs, where do you think the museum data can be embedded? Like it can be embedded up to where?
It can be embedded anywhere. That's the goal, for it to be able to be used and consumed by other developers, by other companies, and internally. That's the whole goal. It's to make it ubiquitous.
That makes sense. This is why APIs are made, right? You know,
yes.
Maximize distribution and self-service for people who we didn't reach, where we're not able to reach, to finally find what they were looking for and build with it, build on top of it, on the shoulder of giants. Yep. Thank you, Rayvn, for having been with us. And yes, we'll hope to continue the discussion at our next events in person and to follow the work you have been doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Mehdi. I appreciate the time to be here.